Time for our Monday panel. Peter McGauran and Simon Bakes. Gentlemen, great to see you. Simon, that Newspoll today, the Resolve poll was even worse, but the Newspoll has the primary vote just below where it was for Labor at the last election. What's your thinking as to what the mood would be like within Labor ranks, Simon?
Yeah, well, I think we're in this period, and we have been for quite an extended period of time, where the polling is around about that sort of 50-50 mark, occasionally a little bit better for the government of the day. And is that any surprise when Australians are under really quite severe cost of living pressure? I don't think that's. I don't think anyone inside Labor would think that was, in doubt, that Australians are doing it tough at the moment, and that might be reflected in opinion polls. I think the thing that would be giving them some hope going forward is that despite that enormous strain that a large section of the Australian community is under, they haven't abandoned the government yet. I think we've seen in other political cycles that when you've got Australians under this amount of economic pressure, they often do turn against the government of the day. But look, we're 6 to 9 months or so off next election. I think the government knows it's got a lot more work to do. Obviously, it gave the tax cuts and various other cost of living relief pressures in the budget, which have helped a little bit with Australian families. But as I've been saying for months, Kieran, ultimately, interest rate cuts will probably be the thing that Australians are looking for between now and election.
Yeah, indeed. So much uncertainty, Peter McGauran, isn't there? And so much rests on that issue of rates, given the government has, during its term, seen a dozen rate rises from the RBA. They'll be hoping to try and shift that trajectory.
Agreed, Kieran, but it's beginning to look like an interest rate cut is the cavalry coming over the hill because nothing's working for Labor. This is what's worrying them the most. There's no circuit breaker. It doesn't matter what initiatives they introduce or what they throw at the cost of living crisis. It's not being reflected in the polls. Secondly, Labor can't see where they're going to win more seats. They believe now they'll lose 4, 5, possibly 6 seats, but they can't see where they can make them up. So now we've got Newspoll, the most authoritative and credible and the biggest of all polls. It joins Freshwater, Redbridge and Resolve, all putting the primary vote of the two parties and the approval of the two leaders basically at the same level. Labor's going into minority government. Yes, an interest rate cut might be the lifesaver, but it might even come too late.
The other issue, Simon, that's certainly a possibility, what Peter's saying there. The other scenario is, though, that once Labor does crank up an inevitable campaign against the nuclear proposal, and once you get closer to an election, people zero in on the alternative. That's the other thing we've got to factor in here.
Yeah, that's right. And the problem, I guess, that Peter Dutton's got is he actually isn't proposing any alternatives that will address the cost of living crisis anytime soon. I mean, let's just take the nuclear policy as an example. Even if you said that his policy operates the way that he says it will operate, which I think is an extreme doubt, most people think it'll actually, in the longer term, put up the cost of electricity in Australia. But even if you accept his supposition that it'll bring down electricity costs, it's not going to do it for 10 or 15 years' time. And people need cost of living relief right now.
Yeah. Well, Peter, that's an issue. Obviously, Peter Dutton has given his teams a sense of hope. His approval rating is back up and the primary back into competitive territory. There is a sense of hope. The only stumbling block that seems hard to get around right now, you can see a scenario where they could get to minority government, absolutely, but the challenge is those teal seats.
You're right on all fronts. I agree with Simon that the nuclear policy is not going to win him the election because it doesn't feed directly, as Simon says, into the cost of living issue. But it's established Dutton and the opposition and given them a political benefit on a whole other range of fronts. Dutton's running a classic opposition textbook campaign. Small target, except for some defining issues to prove he's got the courage of his convictions. So, look, it's too close to call. Dutton can't yet find a way over the teal bridge, if you like, as you say, Kieran. That's what stops him being a sure bet at the next election. Can he win them over in negotiations to form a minority government on his own? I wouldn't rule it out.